What's going on, everybody? It's Joe with All About Comics. I'm here with Nick Filardi, right?
Yep.
Okay, I should have asked that before we even went live. I
We
just
killed
thought
30
about
minutes just bullshitting.
that. Right, exactly. So we're here, Nick Filardi. Oh my God, yeah. Mute your side on the YouTube.
Is it going?
Yeah,
It
just
doesn't look like it is. I
you
don't
go on
it's
the.
not yeah, it's not playing. It's muted.
Is it on mine?
Maybe.
Is it on mine?
What kind of operation are we
I
running
am the
here?
foul. I'm the foul. I fouled up. It's the
Oh
first part on
man.
me. I foul. My fault.
This is off the all this is unusable. Don't use
Unusable.
any of this.
Restart. So
Uh,
yeah, we're with Nick Filardi. He's the colorist. You've done inking as well.
I haven't done inking.
What
I don't know
have you
what
listed? Have you listed on Comic Book
on my
Database
comic book
as
database
inking?
as an inker. Yeah, I don't know why. I
It's
it's a mystery.
that
Somebody
is
got
crazy.
the credits wrong on something, and then it just like spiraled because I saw it on multiple sites, and it
Mhm.
just was like one person reported it wrong, and then everybody got their information from that person, and then now I'm an inker.
Well, it's good. You got double features on you now, right?
Yeah. I don't get the paycheck to prove it though. That's the problem.
Well, next time, maybe next time you can get that.
Yeah.
So you're working on Realm right now.
Yes.
With Seth Puck, right? Seth Peck.
Yeah. Peck.
And Jeremy, what's his last name?
Hun.
Hun. Okay.
Haun.
Hun. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're working with him and everything like that. Now, how did you and them come together to get you to work on Realm? How did that come about?
I haven't met Seth, but I've known Jeremy for like 10 years now.
Mhm.
We did way back in the day. Some of my first like DC work was we were doing backups. I think in Detective Comics, and that was the first time we worked together. We
Mhm.
did some Batgirl stories and Batwoman stories, and I think we did a Two-Face story, but I'm not sure because the art and writing team kind of like changed a little bit, but I was kept on through all the backups. So I'm not sure if Jeremy was actually working on the Two-Face story, or maybe the writers rotated or something. I can't exactly. It's like forever ago, and it's a backup forever ago. So it's like a blip on my radar.
So was this like New 52 Batman, or was this?
No, this is like
before?
way before that. Yeah.
Really?
This is
Wow.
before New 52, before all that stuff. Yeah. So, I'm digging like way back in the long box for this thing.
Okay.
But yeah, so we worked on that. I actually, it was like 3 apartments ago. It was a long time ago. Yeah.
Timelines, apartments. I get it.
Yeah. It was like the first stuff that I had done with texture, and at the time I remember really wrestling with DC because they were telling me that I was going over the ink limits, that everything was a little bit dark, and I was having problems calibrating my screen for print. Like everything on my screen looked good, and then I'd hand it to DC and they'd be like, this is way too dark, you're at like 350% ink levels, this is going to smear all over like it's not going to absorb into the paper, like What are you doing? And I was just like, okay. It was like one of the first times I worked for DC, so I was just like, my career is over, we're done.
That's funny.
Thankfully people are patient with you and also forget, maybe. I don't know.
That's good.
Yeah,
that's
good.
So you actually have to calibrate where you're at on your screen that you work with on inking to get the inks right.
Yeah, so I have a center monitor that's like rigged up for print. It's built to be a little bit darker. It's tweaked to be as close as it can get, because you will drive yourself crazy. I don't know if you've ever like the closest thing that like most people have done that's like similar is like they go to a paint store and they try to like match paint, and they're looking at like 20 shades of the same paint, and they're like, I don't even know is this even blue anymore? Like you're just like so in the fucking weeds with it.
Right.
That's the same thing that can happen, because you're like, okay, I'm gonna mess with the curves, and you're like, it's a little bit yellow, and you like tweak it down like a couple points down, you're like, now it's a little bit blue, and you tweak the magenta, and you're like, I don't even know, and then you hit this point where you're like 6 hours has gone by, and you're like,
one color.
yeah, just like trying to get it perfect, because all the other color affects everything else around it.
Right.
So it's like a fool's errand, and they make actually like little machines that you can attach to your monitors to calibrate it for print. Eventually I got one of those after DC was like basically being like, you're fucking it up.
Right.
So yeah, my center monitor is calibrated for print, and it's a little bit darker than the other monitors, which actually makes gaming on this monitor a little bit awkward, because like, a dark place like Doom 3 or something like that is like extra dark.
Yeah.
To the point where I'm like, am I supposed to be able to move through this hallway, or am I just running at a wall for 20 minutes?
I know what you mean. On those darker screens, like that's what you have on the old tube televisions. If you didn't put the contrast up right and the colors right on those dome televisions from back in the day, you were sitting there trying to play that Call of Duty for the first time on Xbox 360. You're like, oh no.
You're like, do I see them? Do I not see them?
Is that a guy?
Right? Is that a guy? Yeah.
And then you get shot. It was a guy.
It was a guy. So I have the center monitor calibrated for print. That's the Cintiq that I actually draw on. It's like touchscreen, all that kind of stuff. And then I have a left and right monitor, one of them horizontal, and I watch like Netflix and stuff like that on there. And then the other monitor is vertical, and that makes it easy for like scripts to have them next to the monitor, so that if I'm working on a page, I can see the script right there. And if I get notes back on a project, I can put the notes over there and be able to have reference on the other screen that has Netflix going. So it's a whole freaking operation.
It sounds like it.
Yeah. I mean, I've also been doing it for a long time. Like, you don't need any of this stuff. Like, you need, like, when I started, it was, I had a PowerPC Mac that was like before they put Intel chips into them, and I had a tube like CRT monitor, and then I had a like Intuos One, which is like the little like touch. It's like a touchpad thing with a pen, and it like you don't draw on the screen, you draw on this little pad, and it shows up on the screen. So it was like anything that you would buy now at the bargain basement rate is better than what I was doing when I started.
Wow.
Like, yeah, you don't if you have a computer, you are already like a step up from where I started.
Well, I mean, I've seen people use what is that program on the computers? It's like it's just a regular coloring program. Photoshop, I think it is.
Yeah.
They just use Photoshop.
Photoshop's more than a coloring program. Photoshop is like, photo retouching program. It's like it's just you put an image in there and you can manipulate it a million different ways. And the thing has grown more in the last, like, I feel like 6 or 7 years. I feel like it's always growing. They're always improving it. They're always adding features to it. It's deep. I work with it like 7 hours, 10 hours a day, every day for the last like 10 or 15 years. And there's still stuff that I'm like digging out of that program that I'm like, oh, I didn't know I could do that.
That's funny.
Yeah.
In the chat here, man, everyone's loving it right now. They love that you're here.
Yeah, man.
I had 2 questions. One of which was, do you like doing it coloring? I'm just going off the cuff on this question because I can't find it. Do you like to, what do you prefer now? Coloring through the monitors, which sounds like that's what you've been doing the whole time, or coloring with markers?
Oh, monitors. But, I actually, back in the day, when I started doing coloring, which was like 2003, I was working for a studio that was in Savannah, Georgia, where I was going to college, and they didn't used to. The process, the way it is now, is like I'll get pages from the Marvel FTP or the Warner Brothers FTP, and I'll get the digital files, and then I'll take those digital files, put them in a Photoshop, color them up, send them back in, and we can, if a book needs to go to print, it'll happen like, sometimes in very, very rushed circumstances, like I'll hand the pages in and then it'll go to print, like it's ready to go, except for that last page. We just drop it in and we send it to print. Back in the day, colorists used to get these like 8.5 by 11 pages, or maybe slightly larger than that. And the paper felt like money, like it had kind of a fabric-y kind of feel to it. And the colorists would get this and they would marker render the whole page. They just color it. Like they were coloring, a coloring book. And then that would get passed to a what's called a separator. And then the separator would like pin it up next to his monitor and be like, I think that's like this yellow here, and I'll try to get it as close as I can for print, and then send that file to print. So it was like a weird process, and as the tech got better, we kind of like cut out the middleman. And I was like right on the edge when they were cutting out. Like there was like still a couple of like older colorists that were like diehards still. When I was working in the studio, we were actually getting boards from 100 Bullets. We were getting pages sent in that we would have to like scan and then do the seps for the separators. And because Patricia Mulville was doing the coloring for that. So it was kind of neat, but like I haven't really touched markers outside of Comic Cons like probably since college. So the only time I ever really do marker stuff I do when I'm at a show. If somebody gets a sketch that they like, they want to get it colored. So a lot of times it's like stuff that's like looser sketches, shorter sketches that they're just like, oh, it'd be great if it could get like tightened up, I come with markers and we'll do marker sketches and negotiate rate based on size and content and all that kind of thing. So that's the only time I really do markers. I'm sitting on like 2 commissions right now. Evan, if you're watching, I'm sorry. It's going to get out. I swear to God. Like this is the problem is that like I was trying to hit deadlines that were tough. I had 2 DC books that overlapped with each other. They were due on the same day. So it was just like a total shit show, like trying to get everything out the door because I was like juggling 2 teams at once. And we managed to get it out the door on time every time. Like it was good. It could have been a lot worse. Thankfully, everybody was very professional and in the game. Could have been a lot worse, but I was just like ripping my hair out, working like nonstop. And then that happened, and then the hurricane blew through. So I was like, fuck, I have to get as many pages out the door before this hurricane rolls through. Because I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna lose power. So if I lose power, like I can't do anything. So
exactly.
So I was like, I gotta get all these pages out. And then we didn't lose power. And then I was like, well, now I got the next project. And I was like exhausted. And like trying to do extra stuff has been really tough, which is why my own YouTube channel like hasn't really updated in a long time.
It hasn't.
Yeah. So
sad.
I know there's like, dude, trust me, there's like a million extra things that I want to do. I started a Twitch. I started porting it over to YouTube as well. The videos, and I have a bunch of ideas for that, and I have a bunch of ideas for a blog that I want to start, but trying to get everything off the ground and finding the time to do it is really, really difficult because I'm a one-man show, just like any other comic artist you have on here usually is, except if they're like at a high level and they have staff. Like I think the fractions have staff that help them out. But like, yeah, at the end of the day, it's like the book's got to come out on time. That's number one. And then number 2 is like, I need to have a steady grip on my own sanity. So like I need to spend time with my fiance, and I need to, like take the dog to get to his cardiology appointment,
Right.
like we were talking about before.
Right.
Like like these life can't like fray around the edges. Like there's still, I'm a human being and this shit needs to get done. And then when I have time for extra shit on top of that, it's like, okay, maybe we can start doing the Twitch stuff again, you know?
There you go. Well, that's good.
Maybe,
I mean,
maybe we can get these marker
prints done.
Yeah. God, I shouldn't have taken them. Evan, I'm sorry. Evan, Lan, I'm sorry.
Hopefully, Evan, he'll be done soon. He'll get it done. He'll get it done.
Yeah.
I
feel the heat.
He feels the heat. It's coming through. We got multiple questions in here.
Okay, yeah.
So, we got one from Big East Comics, and we got one from Rebel Comics and Gaming, and we got one from Comics and stuff. I know Rebel Comics and Gaming is going to be leaving to go to work real quick, so let's get his.
Let's say it
quick. So he's an indie creator. He has his own indie book and everything like that. And I've read his book. It's pretty good. It's in black and white. So this is a question that he's been trying to figure out for himself is what would be a reasonable rate for a colorist per page for small press indies?
Okay, this is a great question. So a lot of it depends on who you're hiring, what your reach is, and if you're forking over % of the intellectual property, like what kind of contract you're working up.
Mm-hmm.
If what I'm saying to you, if you're listening to that and you're just like, oh man, I'm just trying to make a comic book, like, then if you're just trying to make a comic book and you're like that, all that kind of stuff's like out of your realm of I don't know. It's just like, if you're starting at the bottom, basically, I would pay whatever you can afford to pay, whatever you think is fair, and keep in mind that if it's on the low end, it's gonna take a while, like, because the person's probably gonna have to work a job. The person's probably gonna have to chip away at it, and it is hard work. Like I encourage anyone who thinks that like being a colorist is easy, like take a black and white page from Batman Black and White, scan it in, and try to color it. Like really, you will be shocked at like how difficult it is. So that said, I think that the base rate, and I talked about this on my YouTube channel, I think that the base rate for colorists should be $50 a page. And I know that's higher than what a lot of companies, some smaller press companies pay, especially with new talent. Like a lot of the new talent in the industry, I feel like is getting kind of jerked around with these lower rates because they're like, well, if everybody else is paying a lower rate, I'm going to pay a lower rate, and I'm going to cut the corners, and like you need the company to break in, so they're getting kind of taken advantage of. I think the reason I feel like $50 is a good minimum wage is because 25% of the $50 gets taken out in taxes, and then you're also going to have to pay another $10 a page on top of that out of the colorist's pocket to get it prepped and flatted for you. And when it comes down to that, if you do 40 to 50 pages at $50 a page, it breaks down to if you have a minimum wage job. Like if you're working full time at minimum wage in America, like $7.50 an hour for minimum wage.
Like
yeah. So and two books is about 2 weeks worth of work. But the kicker is like, well, I'll pay 25 and because it's 2 weeks worth of work. But the thing is, when you're starting, it's tough to book gigs, and in order to have like, a living wage, you need to like have the wiggle room. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that if you're not paying $50 a page, the person can say, well, I can walk away from your book and work at McDonald's and flip burgers and make more money. Like that's what you're competing with in reality when you're talking about like base bottom start. But but I mean, other than that, like really it depends on like what the person's cool with. I know a lot of very talented colorists who are breaking in, who are just like, I take what I can take because I want to work, and I was like that too. The first 2 books I did one for absolutely nothing, like no page rate, just like out of my own pocket. And then I did another one for $60 a page, and that one covered the flats for both of them. and then I basically made no money. Like
You
I
gotta
think
cover
the first year I was doing comics, I think I made like under $20,000 for the year. Like I think I made like 12 or 15, somewhere in there.
That's less than a part-time.
Yeah. It was rough, but it was like I was 21 and I wanted to break in, and I'd rather work than not work. And
Right.
you know, if people are young and hungry and they can make their own decisions, my 2 cents is, I think $50 is the minimum wage. And that is a very long answer to a very straightforward question.
Well, he appreciates that, I'm pretty sure. I haven't scrolled down yet because I want to keep where I'm at on these questions.
Sure.
The next one here is, after coloring using software, do you think it weakens your freehand skills?
No, man, because I'm doing it freehand on the monitor. Like
monitor.
you know.
Subscribe to his channel, Biggies, and
you will watch me do it. Like I have a little pen, and I'm just coloring, man. Like, yeah. It's
there's a Thanos he did on there. He did like multiple videos with the Thanos where he did he had his page, and then other colorists came on and they did their own. If you watch it, man, it's very informational, and it's pretty cool watching the process between the flats all the way out to the full finished product. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, we got a ton of other colorists to participate in that, and you can see like how everyone solved it a little bit differently. You know, you think when you see like a comic book page and it's like Thanos standing there, you're like, oh well, I know what Thanos looks like, so I'll just color it like Thanos. But then you see like, and it's the same. You don't realize that because you don't have the same experience. I mean, everybody doodles, you know. Everybody will doodle a little Thanos every once in a while, but not everyone gets in the nuts and bolts of comic book coloring a lot. So people will be like, "Oh, draw Thanos," you're going to get 20 different Thanoses. But you say to the same person, "Oh, color this Thanos," and you're going to get 20 different Thanoses. It's the same thing because it's art and interpretation and problem solving. It's the same animal.
Right. We got comics and stuff. He's in the chat here. Yeah. He's a colorist as well, and if I'm not mistaken, he also does pressing for comic books and stuff. And
cool.
He just started following your channel.
Nice.
And everything like that. So he's really enjoying everything. He said with coloring on the critiques, there's no cleanup. And no paint wait time, which is good.
Yeah.
He says, okay, here's his question. I was going through trying to find the question.
Sure.
Do you think art schools are worthwhile? Better yet, do you think that you would have still had the direction with your career as it took without art schools?
That's a fucking loaded question.
It is.
Like I said, when I got out, I was making like $20K, and I was like one of the only working people in my program. I went to Savannah College of Art and Design. They had a comic book program, but holy God, I took one color theory class. Out of 4 years, I took one color theory class, and I took one comic book coloring class. And by the time I took the comic book coloring class, I had actually had, I think, more experience than the teacher at comic book coloring.
I remember you talking about this on one of your videos.
So like, it's tough because like I don't think I got anything tangible out of the classes. You know, like I don't think that, but I was drawing all the time, which is like very important. And I wish that I was drawing more around that time. But I think that the classes kept you busy and kept you thinking artistically, which I think is valuable. But the actual content of the class, I feel like isn't that strong. But the one big thing that you can get out of school, that's like bigger than anything that you would get on your own, is that you are surrounded by like-minded people. And when I started going to comic book conventions, when I started looking for work, I was going with buddies, like I was going with friends that I went to school with, like, and when they did well, I did well, like the rising tide all ships, you know, like
Right.
when they have to pass on a project, they can offer up you. When they take a project, they'll be like, oh, we can get Nick to color this, you know, like
Right.
that's kind of the best part of school. However, that said, when I went to school, it cost like $80K, and I think that now it's like 120, 125, and it's like you really gotta weigh, like, if that, you gotta make that financial choice for yourself, and you gotta take it very seriously. When I was 18, I couldn't tell, you know, $10,000 from $5,000. Like, it was all like after $1,000, it was all the same to me. I was just like, well, that's a big pile of money. I don't know, whatever. Let's just do this.
Right. I think it's how most young kids are with trade schools.
Yeah. And I wish I had somebody to be like, well, here are the long-reaching consequences of it. Like, I'm 35, and I am one of the most successful people in my graduating class, and I am still paying off student loans. Like, it is brutal. It is brutal. And like, that's for $80K. I can't imagine if it's another, like, you know, 40 on top of that, you know.
That's insane.
It's really, really bad. So, I mean, you can get away with not going to school, art school. You know, not if you're an engineer. If you're an engineer, you should probably go to school.
Right.
But you know, art school, you could kind of get away with it. But you have to be self-motivated, and you have to be like getting out of your comfort zone. If you're sitting around drawing anime all day, you fucked up. If you are going to, if you're paying for life drawing classes at your local community college, good on you. You're doing it right. But like, you also need to, in addition to all of that, also need to go to Comic Cons, and you need to meet people, and you need a network, because that's such a huge part of the industry. I wish that, and especially now that we have YouTube and Twitch and Twitter and everything, like, everybody's interconnected all the time. Everybody's like knows each other. It's like a tight-knit family. And if you want to be a part of that, it helps you. And it used to be in like I would say the 80s, or I mean, I assume it was like this in the 80s, where like the work could kind of speak for itself. I don't think it's like that anymore. I think the only time that it's like that is when you're at like the peak, like 1% of comics, like the guys who are just like smoking hot writers right now who can just do whatever they want to do. Right. You know? So, and if you're starting out, you're not there. So
now I say this all the time, and it was also mentioned here in the chat that colorists are very underrated. And I've said it before, where I seen some line work, a beautiful sketch done by Jack Kirby. Yeah. And then the colorist comes over to go ahead and do the color, and just totally just obliterated.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
This was. I mean, what happened? You know,
you can pull down like 20 books at your local shop, and like lay them all out by 20 different colorists, and be like, oh, this one looks great, and this one is questionable. You know, right. Like it happens, and you know, it even happens. Like, I feel like consistency is a beast. Like, I feel like when I first saw Jordi Belaire's work, she was doing very flat stuff, which was a little unappealing to me. So I kind of wrote it off. And I was seeing like JPEGs pop up online, and this was before she was huge. And I was like, I don't know, this is okay. But what I didn't get was that, like, you crack open her books, like, you could see the consistency was there. Like, there's not a page in those issues where she was like rushed or tired or like, you know, like whatever. It was like, even though it wasn't what I liked at the time and what I was attracted to, it was so consistent, and it was so like consistently like 90% there that like it was undeniable. Like, even when she was starting, it was undeniable, and I just didn't realize it because I was looking at JPEGs, you know. Right. Yeah.
Well, hey, they got it. Colors need to either pay you guys more, or you guys just need to get more respect.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing too is like, when you see a book at the shop a lot of times the colorist, we're like the last person in the line, you know,
Right.
like the writer might blow the deadline a little bit by like
Mhm.
a couple of days or maybe a week or whatever, and the penciler's like just struggling, trying to do as much as he can, and then the inker, like his kid is sick, and like, you know, and so by the time like it gets to you, it's like, look, motherfucker, we got 3 days to hit this deadline, you know. And
Right.
it's like, oh shit, you know, like, so and you know, when books don't come out on time, you lose readers. So you have to balance that. Like, I don't want to turn in a bad product ever.
Mhm.
But if like if like it comes down to like, oh, you know, I'm gonna need like 6 hours, and then we don't have 6 hours, I'm gonna try my best to like tough it out
Right.
and try to get you there. Try to like put it over the you know,
The hump.
1 yard line. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So, I got a couple more questions. I'm gonna save those questions real quick to talk a little bit about Realm, because I
Sure.
mean,
Yeah.
we can keep going on these questions. I mean, they're gonna be shooting them, but I'm gonna hold
Dude,
them.
I'm here all night.
Well,
I got
if you want me
nothing
to
to
go,
do.
if you want to go to the next question, I can. Then we'll talk
Yeah.
about Realm.
Whatever, man.
All right. Well, then, Cat Ran Figures. She actually picked the book up and she enjoyed it as well. I remember that. She did a little review on her channel there.
Oh, cool. She should put the link in the chat. I don't know if I've
Yeah.
retweeted it, but if it's a nice review, I will absolutely put it out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Cat Ryan, you hear that? Put the link in the chat of your video, and then we'll retweet it. So she asks, what is your favorite project you've worked on, or what is the project you are the most proud of?
Oh man, I think so. I've had a pretty long career. I think maybe the first book that I worked on was, I have like a lot of fondness attached to it because it's the first like, you know, consistent comic work that I was doing. It was called C Mech. It was drawn by Andy McDonald and written by Ivan Brandon.
Mm-hmm.
I have so much fondness for that book, and I actually the first trade came out. And I actually recolored all of the 6 issues for the trade too, so it was like all consistent. And I do not think it is my best work because it is like the first thing I did. You know, like it's not. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure everybody on the team, Ivan, Andy, and Miles. Like, I'm sure we were all like, look back and we're like, you know, it's not great. Yeah. But I have so much fondness for that and the intellectual property in general, and it's just, I love that book. I would say that for a while, comics is a weird beast, and the way that you talk about making comics and the way that you talk about trying to break into comics, that phrase "break in" kind of like makes you think that like, oh, once you're in, then you're just in, and you'll get like cool stuff and you'll have work all the time. And it's like, it does not work that way at all. Like, yeah, it's like, you gotta like, it's like trying to keep your head above water all the time rather than like breaking in. You're like just trying to fucking survive, in the nicest possible way, because I love this industry. But like, so I went in my career, hit this point where I felt like I was broken in, but didn't know. But I was like treading water. I was like, I couldn't figure out why I wasn't getting cool work. I couldn't, and then it like kind of made me bitter. And I was like, I couldn't figure out what was going on. But it was like stuff that I was like, well, you know, like I didn't put 110% on this project, but I'll figure out the next one because I've already broken in, and you know, like whatever, I got work down the line, like it's fine. And then I realized it was like a pattern of that was like screwing it up, you know. And one of the things that like, when I started turning around, and it was when I met my fiance, who was like, you have to, I needed some lifestyle changes that were bad. And once that happened and I became like a better person, and I started thinking about comics more carefully and taking it more seriously, my career kind of turned around. And the book that I credit, there's 2 books that I feel like were 2 turning points, which was Helheim with Joel Jones and Colin Bunn. That book marked like the start, not maybe not the start, but like when it started to like feel like, oh shit, like my new attitude towards comics and my new headspace was finally starting to click into something that was yielding results that I was like happy with, you know, where like I would do a project, it would come out like 3 months later, and I would see pages from it and I wouldn't hate them anymore. And I was like, oh shit, like this is working. This is like the wheels are turning. And then after that, it was Howling Commandos of S.H.I.E.L.D. with Brent Schoonover. That was like, I had a conversation with Ivan, actually, at a bar, at a show, and he was like, dude, you know, like, what's going on with your career? And this was like 2 years of me, like, really starting to, like, turn around. And he just, like, you know, everybody's busy. You see what you see. You're able to read what you read. But, like, you know, not everybody reads everything. And so he was like, what's going on with your career? Like, your work's not doing so hot. And he's like, I'm not trying to like crap on you. I'm just like, I'm your friend, and you know, you're my friend, and like I would want somebody to like look out for me. And I was like, fuck, man. Like I'm like, I'm trying to turn it around, and like Ivan's like, you're not turning it around. And I'm like, I'm a fucking double turning it around. I'm on fire now. Like I'm gonna get this. I'm rabid. So then like I started working on Howling Commandos of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I was like, I'm going to hit this book fucking hard. And Brent Schoonover and I feel like turned around because of all of this. This was like kind of the perfect storm. And then I was working with Brent, and I really liked him. And I really wanted to work with him. So he was stoked. I was stoked. And we were working, that was Frank Barbary's.
Barbary's comic, that he was working with.
Yeah. And it was like this perfect storm, I feel like, of just like dudes who had been kind of established, but not really had like a book to their name. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In a while, and we were just like on fire for that book.
It was a good book too.
And I feel like we gave Marvel a better product than they maybe wanted or realized. You know, like because right up until the 11th hour, like they were asking for like. So here's the thing with comics too, and I talked about this a little bit on my YouTube channel, is that like we're working like 3 to 4 issues ahead. So if like sales dip for number 3, we're working on number 6, and then it's like we're making the decision, oh, are we gonna cancel this book or are we gonna make more? And if the sales dip at 3, this is what happened with Howling Commandos, is like the sales kind of dipped at 3. And then I saw articles when like issue 4 and 5 came out where they were like, hey, everybody pick up this book. We need to save it. And it's like the decision's already been made. You know, like there's such a direct response. You know, like we're so far ahead that like it needs to have consistent momentum.
Right.
And it needs, you know, people need to have a consistent momentum through it too. You know, saving a book at issue 4 or 5 is not it's not the headspace you want to be in. And I know with that book, we were like hemming and hawing, like the editorial was hemming and hawing about like, are we doing another arc? Are we not doing another arc? I don't know. We're like looking at they're like looking at sales figures. They're looking at other stuff. I don't know. It's because it's, you know, a Marvel comic and it's built into the world, and you know, you have like different characters have to do different things down the line and whatever. It's all stuff that's like over my pay grade. But like, I know that like right up until the end, like Brent was penciling cover for issue 7, and I was like on standby, being like, they were like, this cover's going to come in. It's going to come in hot. We're going to need it fast. And then they were like, never mind, we're canceled.
So horrible.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. It's comics. It's the way it is. It's not. I bear no ill will towards anyone. Everyone was working as hard as they could. And you know, it was a good problem. It was a good situation to be in, because like we did such good work that like we put everyone in that position, and it creates like a lasting impression. So I feel like that book absolutely turned it around. And then I actually think The Realm is the other book that I would mention, because I'm starting to do a lot of stuff. I talk about on YouTube channel, like my technique for coloring is very, very basic. It's very bare bones. You look at a lot of like tutorials online and they're like, okay, we're going to layer mask and we're going to, you know, this is your 30th layer and we're going to tweak the settings. And like, I'm like, nah, fuck that shit. We're just going to paint, you know, like one layer, just get it done, put the color down you want. We're done. And the realm is actually a turning point in that. Cause like I'm starting to mess with texture in a meaningful way. I've messed with texture before, but now I'm trying to do it smarter.
Smarterer.
Yeah.
Right.
We're trying to be smarterer about things.
Yeah, I mean, Realm, like with Realm though, you know, going through these pages, like I told you before we went live, you know, I seen you do the cover for issue 3, and the cover for issue 3 sold me just on the cover that you were inking.
Dude, that cover came out so good.
It did. I was like, man. And then like if you watch the video, you start seeing all the different colors, like the background changes. You're going through. Yeah. I'm like, can't the cover just do it on its own? I mean, like when I get it, I want the cover to do that now. You know?
You want it to be like hyper colored, like tilted around. Yeah,
exactly. So I mean,
it's funny with the realm too. It's actually taken me a while to kind of. I lean very colorful, and the realm is very like not colorful. It's like post-apocalyptic, but it's deceptively colorful because I'm colorful. You know, like so. It's like a lot of the notes that I get back are like, can we desaturate? Can we like tweak it to like what the book wants to be, like what the structure of what the story we're telling. But so I'm still like kind of getting a handle on that. So a lot of times I'll be like, hey, look, I did this cover. You know, I know we need it fast. Here's 4 different versions. You know, like because I'm just like I don't know, whatever you guys want. Like pick I'd rather give options than like have to like hem and haw over corrects and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different versions of each cover floating around on my hard drive. And I think on that stream too, like we got it to a point where I was like, I think it's done. And then off stream, I like tweaked it for another like 30 minutes. And then I was like, oh, it's not done.
Right. That's funny.
Yeah.
So with this issue number 1, right. When you got all the pages for you to go ahead and go through and color, like what was your initial thought? Like, did you read the script before you got it?
So I read the script, and like I said, I've been buddies with Jeremy for a while, and he was talking to me about this like maybe a year before he actually started putting, you know, like pen to paper. And I talked to him a lot about being D&D fans and being like, that's kind of my wheelhouse. I love Magic the Gathering. I love, you know, board games and D&D, and I was raised on that stuff. I was playing 2nd edition when I was growing up. I haven't played in a long time because my schedule is too crazy to like commit to a group consistently. But I love it. I love the world. I love the stuff. You know, it's so good. And so he was telling me about this, and I was like, fuck, man, I want to color this book. But he was working with John Rausch a lot. He was coloring, and his stuff's amazing. He was doing a great job with, you know, the darkness and the beauty and stuff like that. So I was like, I was just gonna go with John. You know, like I'm not gonna work on. But I was like, I want this book. You know, like, but we're buds, and he's gonna do what he's gonna do. And I was like, I'm not gonna bring it up. You know, like whatever. And then, meanwhile, I'm like buying Dragonlance comics from like the quarter bin at like Comic Cons and stuff like that, and I'm like into this fucking weird shit. By the way, one of my favorite things to do, you were talking about how you just came from Rose City. One of my favorite things to do if you're with a buddy and you're going around separately, like combing through boxes,
right,
is like have a competition, see who can find the worst comic book in the building.
Wow.
Yeah, and then come together and be like, okay, you think you found the worst comic book, but look at this.
What's funny is if you grab the worst comic book and then you take it to Neil Adams, say, can you please sign Skate Man for me?
Yeah, right. And you'd be surprised, man. Some of those worst comic books are real good. But at any rate, I was kind of living in this mentality, and then he, for whatever reason, was like, I want to change it up. And a lot of people, like consistently will team up with a colorist for a while and then feel like, well, I want to try something new. So, like it's not personal, it's not whatever. It's, it is what it is. And so Jeremy was like, hey, do you want to try coloring for the realm? And I was like, sure. And he was like, well, I want to do it flat and I want to do it, like all these, he was throwing all these things at me. And I was like looking at this painter Grimshaw from like the 18th, 17th century. And I was like drawing inspiration from that. And I was like, okay, I'm going to make it like this. And this is something that I've done like 3 or 4 times in the last couple of years where like, I'm like, okay, when I start working on this comic, it's going to look like this. And then I get the pages and I'm like, okay, it's going to look like this. I swear. It doesn't look like this now, but I'm just going to square peg round hole and force really hard. And it's just like, no, man, you just got to like roll with what's on the page. And so a lot of the Realm 1, I feel like, had me trying to do this flat comic stuff and then like Jeremy being like, no, like this isn't really working, let's try corrections. And then it was like 4 rounds of corrections and it was like, well, I think this is good, but like, if I had the knowledge now, I'm on issue 4 of where it's going to go, like as far as style, I think I could have knocked out 1, A lot faster, and B, a lot better. So if you liked the issue 1, you will love where it goes. Because like I by the time like midway through issue 2, like I really have my legs with the thing, and it really starts to come together.
Well, that's good. There was a question here that we had from Comic Fan, which he thought it was funny about the thing with the Comic-Con. He goes, in an industry of failing to consistently improve and evolve, what do you feel is your greatest challenge?
I mean, I think that the greatest challenge for colorists or for me, I feel like the greatest challenge for colorists in general is visibility and understanding. Part of the reason why I do my YouTube channel and why I let people in on my process is because I want people to understand it. I want people to see the work that goes into it. And I want people to try it on their own. I feel like the best way to gain respect for the like the comic industry as a whole is to try to make your comics. Like everybody's got ideas. I'm sure everyone in the chat has ideas for comics. Like trying to get it off the ground will give you an immense respect for the people who consistently do.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the game. Like I feel like a lot of people just aren't aware of comic coloring. They're just like, oh, it's in color, I'll pick it up. Like that's as much as they think about it.
Right.
And that attitude is shifting, and I want to be a part of that shift, and I want to push that shift as hard as I can. So that's why I do like the extra stuff on the side. And that's why that stuff's important to me. For me, like what I need to do as far as like growing as an artist, I feel like I need to draw more to try to like better understand composition and things like that. I feel like I have a good sense on it, and I need to like draw a little bit so that I can paint my own drawings, like digital paint, and start to get into that and start to grow into like background painting and stuff like that. And I think that once I'm able to do that, my work's going to improve tenfold. I feel like that's the next hurdle. Like once comics, and this is the other thing too, is like every time I feel like, oh, comics, I got it figured out, like I'll go on to the next thing now. Like I always like, that's when I get like knocked in the head and I'm like, oh, I don't have anything figured out. Like,
right.
Whatever. I guess we'll just roll with comics still. So not that I'm looking to get out of comics, but like, I'm looking to diversify and like rising tide all ships, like trying to do my best to create the most interesting, bombastic pages that everybody's going to want. I'm trying to. One of the things that I'm trying to do in Heartthrob, and Heartthrob's a really good exercise for, is like Heartthrob is a lot of talking. It's about Callie who gets a heart transplant, and the heart is from this guy Mercer. I'm doing a very quick rundown of this book.
Yep.
And she gets the heart of a con man, and she falls in love with him, and they start robbing banks and stuff like that. But it's like more a love story than it is an action book. And it's a lot of talking, and because of that, it's like I'll get pages where I'm like, okay, we're just sitting here talking for 3 pages. How do I make this as interesting as I can for the reader? And that is like a struggle, because it's like these are just talking heads. Nobody's on fire, no one's exploding, no one's got laser eyes. Like it's like those pages are like, oh, I can sleepwalk through these.
Right.
But the quieter stuff and holding the reader's attention through the quieter stuff, I feel like is just as important, maybe more important. And that's the stuff that I'm looking to improve. And I'm also trying to look to improve my patience. I feel like 99% of like my own struggle is like, are we done? I think we're done. Am I done because I'm tired, or am I done because I'm done? Like that kind of mentality. I don't know, but and that can go, that probably is for a lot of people in a lot of work situations, across comic books and everything else in life, is like, are we done because we're tired, or are we done because we're done?
Right. There was a quick question. Are you going to New York Comic Con?
No, I will not be at New York Comic Con. I won't be doing any more Comic Cons until next year. I like front loaded this year with like a fuck ton of Comic Cons, and then like kind of burned out and was like, I don't want to do any more Comic Cons. So
right.
I think next year I'm going to try to, rather than doing like 3 cons in 3 months, I'm going to start to space them out a little more strategically. I was actually thinking about doing Rose City next year, if I'm able. I did Emerald City Comic Con this year, and it was like right back to back with C2E2, and man, oh god, it burnt out. But yeah, next year I'm going to be doing Rose City for the back end of the year, and maybe New York. New York's a toss-up. Here's the other thing too: if you ever go to a Comic Con and you see a colorist there, chances are that colorist is not making any money. Like, chances are that colorist is there on his own dime, out of his own pocket, like paid his own airfare, paid for his table, sat there, is not moving enough books to cover the hotel room. It's like, when I go to a con, I always lose money. But the reason I keep going to cons is because I fucking love comic books, and I want to be like, if somebody has The Realm #1 and they have Jeremy and Seth sign it, and they're like, oh, I wish I could get Nick, but he doesn't go to Comic Cons. Like, that's my nightmare scenario, is like somebody who's like, excited about something that I worked on and is not able to like, express that to me, or like, I'm not able to do something for them that they want, like I like the sense of community, and I like being inspired by artists around me. And I feel like Comic Cons recharge me in a way that's like tangible. So that's why I go to shows. But like, I don't make any money at shows, and I don't know any colorists that do. Maybe Matt Wilson makes money at shows because he brings a lot of like T-shirts and stuff, and he's got quite an operation set up. I know Jordy signs a ton of books, but I don't know if she actually makes any money. I don't know if she brings stuff or not. But yeah, like, and those are like basically all the comic colorists I see at shows. Maybe Jordan Boyd has started going to more shows, but I'm pretty sure he's not making money. I don't know. And like, it's tough for colorists to make money too, because like, we're not as in demand as everybody else. And on top of that, it's like, not like we're doing sketches, which is like where a lot of artists make their money, is doing sketches and selling pages. We don't have that opportunity. So like, I'm moving like trades and issues and stuff. And like, another reason why I like to go to shows is because I like to bring variant covers to shows. And, if somebody is a fan and is like missing a variant, like, I want to be able to facilitate that. Before I would get variant covers, before I started going to shows, I get variant covers and I'd be like, like they would end up in a pile and then they would end up at a Goodwill. And I was like, this is a terrible system.
That's funny. Variants at Goodwill. That's funny.
Yeah,
that's super funny. So now I know, like at Rose City, when I was there, Kelly Fitzpatrick was there. And
she does.
How,
I don't know. I don't know if she's making. Tamara Bonneville also does a lot of shows. But like I said, I think a lot of those people are there at the show
on their own dime.
On their own dime, and they want to do comics, and they want to be a part of the community, and they want to sign books for you guys, and like that's why they're there. So I mean, if you're there and you see something on their table that's like a fun thing, like a pin or a sticker or whatever, like I urge you to not hesitate to like pick something up.
Well, it's funny because you say you most of you guys are selling trades and issues. Well, my son came with me. He's like 5 years old, and
he's getting sketches.
It's all about him getting sketches. So he went up to her and he's all like, "Can you sketch my book?" And I'm like, "Buddy, she's a colorist. Maybe she'll color one of the sketches."
Books. I've sketched.
That's what she did. She was like, "Well, I can sketch something. What would you like?" And I don't have the book on me right now, but she sketched. He said he wanted Clayface. I'm like, "Why?" I'm like, "Well, all right." And she's like, "Okay," and she did it, and it was It was a really good job.
Yeah, man. I went to art school. Funny. Like I can sketch, like not as well as Mike Omen can, but like or like Joel Jones. Joel Jones fucking puts me to shame. I'll like for a while I was doodling like this little Ricard doodle in Helheim. He's the main character in Helheim. And then like I saw her doodle next to mine, and I'm like, I'm gonna stop doing that.
That is so funny.
Yeah,
she did that for him, and I thought it was like the coolest and funniest thing. I was like, that's awesome.
Kelly's great. And that's the other thing too, is like the entire community, because I think it's like a different mentality than writers and artists with colorists, because colorists can take multiple books at a time.
Right.
A penciler can only take one. One a month is that's like usually where they top out. So it's like if a penciler gets a book that another penciler's up for, and they're buds, like they're still gonna be buds. Like nobody's like, unless they're fucking weirdos, they're not like weird and aggressive or whatever. Like the comic community is great, but like I was recently Brent Schoonover did a Captain Marvel thing with Marvel, and we were talking about it, or like maybe the editor was somebody brought it up to me, and I was like, oh yeah, that'll be cool if that happens. And then I down the line I was like, oh, Jordan got that project. I was like, that's awesome, Jordan's gonna kill it. And like I don't have time anyway, so like it's like I had to cram it into my schedule to get it to work. So it's like, oh, I'm glad Jordan got it, he's a good guy, like I don't know, because of that I feel like I don't have, and I'm not saying that artists do have this kind of animosity with each other, but like, every once in a while, I'm sure like they're not mad, but it'll like sting a little,
Yeah.
And like, I've never felt that way when it comes to comics. Like I've always like, there's enough work to go around, and like, I'm always able to put food on the table, and, so it's all good. Right. Jordan's a good guy. He deserves it. Let him have it.
Let him have it.
Yeah.
So, now we're coming up to the end of the time here.
Oh man.
Us. Yeah, I went quick. Well, I got my kids, and once we open that door, they're gonna come running out, and they're gonna be all loud. I mean,
just leave it running. Just leave it running. We're fine.
All right. I mean, that's fine.
We're going to overtime.
That's fine. We can do that. I mean, if you're okay with that,
I'm okay with it.
I'm sure everybody else is okay with it, because they all know what's up. I just don't, my wife took the kids to go play for the minute, so I'll tell them, come chill. They're gonna be loud.
Whatever you want to do. If you really want to cap it, we can cap it. But
no, it's okay. I mean, I think everybody's enjoying this. Obviously you're having a good time, so we can keep it going. I mean,
I'm also kind of a wordy bastard, so like
it's all right. It's fine.
If there's people like who have questions that we haven't hit, we can try a lightning round, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, we can do it. So, we have a question from Four Flashes on Comics, which is one we've kind of answered already. Do you prefer digital coloring over traditional? It didn't really matter to you, but you do more
I
digital
thought
than
he was asking time perspective. Like because I just have a million hours of experience with digital. Like I can knock out. I do about 4 pages a day, give or take a page.
Right.
Digital, and I think if I had to do a traditional, I would probably crank out 1, maybe.
Right.
It's just, and I don't think it's that one process is faster or slower. I just think, this is what I do, like,
right.
I think if I got a million hours doing marker renderings, I'd be fucking smoking fast at that too.
Yeah, I mean, once you do everything, more than once, you start getting muscle memory and you get things quicker, right?
Yeah, totally. Comics and stuff. I see your question about if I can show what's on my workstation. No, I cannot. It's this is the thing too, is like I'm trying to walk the line. So since I'm a one-man show, I'm like trying to keep my Instagram going and like posting stuff on there, but I also have to ride the line of like, well, so I'm working on like Deadpool 287's coming out October 11th. And that's the start of my run with Deadpool. Scott Koblish is drawing it. Jerry Duggan's writing it. And we did Deadpool 2099 stuff before. And I like, there's a lot of spoiler stuff. Like each individual issue is like really important. And like, there's a lot in each individual issue. And I'm just like, oh man, I want to share this issue, but like I can't. Like you trust me, you don't want to see it. You do, like if you're like, oh, I'm a Deadpool fan, what do you got? And I'm like, check this shit out, and you're like, oh, I wish I read that,
All right, that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Comics and Stuff actually had a question earlier. He wanted to know, would you ever teach? Would you ever do like an online teaching or something like that?
I'm trying to like. If you follow me on Twitch, and I usually go live in like the middle of the day, or middle of the day for West Coast, 3 o'clock, around 3 for East Coast, and I want to be there, like able to show my technique and my process. It's not really like formalized teaching, but it's like, like here's what I do, and if you have any questions, even questions on your own stuff, if you're like, hey, I'm coloring a thing and I'm stuck, like if it's like something that I can tackle really quickly, I'll be like, all right, let's boot it up, put it in stream, let's do it. There was a flatting technique that I was using that I was when I was doing Kyler's Superman, and he was like, you were flatting so fast. And he was like, and I had no idea what was happening. It was like things were
you were quick on that when I was watching. Yeah, click. I'm like, where's he going? What the hell?
Yeah. So he was like, can you just like slow down a little bit and show me the technique that you were using? And I was happy to, like that's why I'm there. And this is also stuff that I feel like, my Twitch channel, by the way, is twitch.tv/nickphil, NICKFIL. And this is kind of like what I was talking about before, is like, everybody has different techniques for things, and everyone is so self-taught and narrowed into like what works for them and what doesn't work for them, that there's no like universal way to color comic books. And the other goal of the stream is to be like, hey, here's how I do it. Like I hope that if enough people do this, we can put together a common language and a common like structure to like how this is done. And like we can all get a little better, like, and I'm a veteran of the industry, and if somebody's starting and they're like, oh man, I really want to like color, but like the flatting is so hard, and like I don't know if I can ever enjoy this. And I'm like, I would love to give you tips to like get it faster, like because I want you in the industry. Like I want people like, right behind me kicking my butt, because like that's how everybody gets better,
Right, absolutely. I mean, it seems like he flatting sucks. So
Yeah,
apparently
yeah, yeah.
flat. He doesn't enjoy flatting so much apparently. Now, you know, since we're still here talking about this, and we did talk a little bit that you do watch a little bit of the comic book community of it's on YouTube,
just
right?
like a little bit.
Now,
It's
what is it?
what I have
Who
time
is it
for.
that you watch? Like, like when you
Oh,
found
God.
some stuff, can you remember any of the
I
handles?
watch whatever gets linked to me, whatever's like popping up in my Twitter feed. So it's not really like oh, I'm gonna watch this person and like religiously. A lot of so I work obviously, you know, like I'm more focused on the creation and the technique and the art driven, like the stuff that is like speculative, like about like pricing and stuff like that. I just don't have any interest in. And that's not to say like you're doing it wrong. You're just like, that's what you're into. I'm not really into that. You know, it's fine, whatever. But so, and a lot of comics is like that. And a lot of comics is also like, you know, like Batman, here's what the Batman issue came out covered. You know, like I'm not emotionally invested in it. So, you know, like that's not really my cup of tea. It's like most of the comic book stuff that I get linked to is either when there's like crazy ass controversies going on, or if there's like technique stuff that people are linking to. Like that's the kind of stuff that I eat up. So yeah, I feel like I get linked, but I would love to you know, see more of that stuff. Like I would love to see like who do you follow? Who should I follow?
Oh my God, who should you follow? Well, you're in the New York area, right?
No, I'm in Florida,
No.
man.
You're in Florida. Why did I think you were in New York?
I was in Philly for a long time. Actually, I can't even say that now. I was in Philly for like 7.5 years, and now I've been in Florida for like 5 or 6. So I guess we're starting to rival the time between the two. Right. So,
well, you could there's a couple Florida people. Floridians.
There's Florida people. As far as like YouTube guys.
Yeah. YouTube guys. Like there's one that's called JLS Comics.
Yeah.
Then there's Don the Comic Book Junkie.
Yeah.
Those guys are in Florida.
I was just thinking, I got to write this down, but it's going to be on the internet.
It'll be.
I don't need to write anything down.
New York, they have a strong presence in the YouTube. You can look up Big East Comics for one.
The only podcast that I was like kind of following was the Short Box, which is a Jacksonville-based podcast for Jacksonville, Florida-based podcast for. So yeah, I was watching them a little bit, and I don't know if they have a YouTube channel or not. I wish that there was. It's tough because there's so many people making so much content about comic books that it's tough to find like kind of a centralized, like it feels like there's no centralized thing. It's like whatever you want to listen to is just there, and it's, you know, it's got its following, but like not like when you think about podcasting, you're like, oh, the McElroy brothers, like that's podcasting. And I don't feel like, as far as I know, comic books doesn't really have like, this is comic book podcasting.
Not really. I know there's a few podcasts that people have pointed me to, and I've listened to it, and it's nothing. It's not for me.
Yeah.
You know,
that's fair.
You know, on YouTube though, there's a few people that I do like. I like my personal favorites that I do like. I do like when people are doing like interviews like this, so I watch a lot of them. There's what's her name? The Frog Queen. She does a lot of like interviews with creators and stuff like that. Then there's one guy who's very knowledgeable. Like,
oh yeah, I do. I just saw Comics and Stuff pointing this out in the chat. I do watch Comic Book Girl 19. You don't like her? You hate her?
No, I don't like her at all.
Oh man,
I'm not a fan.
Okay. I'm not a religious watcher because she does a lot of like movies and stuff, and I won't want stuff spoiled, and you know, she's kind of like all medium. But she is a SCAD graduate just like me. So
nah, I understand. Alumni, I get it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've watched, people have like directed me to her, and I've
Yeah.
watched, and I'm like, bah, I'm just definitely not a fan.
No,
No, I like the old timers, man. Like they're, the guys have been in the industry, or not in the industry, but like collecting for a while.
I mean, we're heading into the debate of like, comic book conventions. Should they be only about comic books, or should they be about other media? Part of the reason why I haven't been to New York, I went to New York maybe like 7 years ago, 8 years ago was the last time I went.
Mm-hmm.
I went to San Diego Comic-Con only one time because I was like, this place just isn't for me. Like, I'm like, as a comic book colorist, like I'm already like a sliver of the comic book community cares about me. And then when you add like film and television and video games, like it's tough to like break through all that. Like it's tough for me to break through just like regular comics and then like add everything else on top. And it's like, I don't have a place here, which sucks. Cause like I want to like hang out. Like it's not that I don't want to. And like, I want to meet a lot of fans, and those comic book conventions are a good way to do that. But like, I feel like the fan who cares about me at San Diego Comic-Con might not ever even see me. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
Exactly.
They're never going to find me. But the fan that likes comics, that wants to like hang out in Charlotte at like Heroes Con is always going to find me. Like Heroes Con is like essentially just Comic Cons. Or just comics. It's like it's a huge amount of creators, very, very few vendors, and it's like an incredible gathering of artists. I don't know if you've ever been to Heroes Comic Con, but it is fantastic. It's my favorite of the year.
I've never been. I'm West Coast, and I don't like flying. Like I'm a little girl when it comes to flying, so I won't fly. Majority of the cons that I've been to are California and Oregon. That's where I've been to.
See, I'm only just starting to like consistently do the West Coast, and there's so much of the United States that I'm skipping over. I really want to do a Dallas show, and I really want to do a Kansas City show, because like I feel like I'm not hitting that like area of the country at all. And if people have books, like the first time I did Emerald City Comic Con, I had a guy come up to the table and he was like, "You're Nick Filardi?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Can you sign some books?" I was like, "Sure." And he like took out a short box, put it on the table, and just like unloaded a collection. Like motherfucker was like digging way back. And
I got a buddy like that.
Yeah, and that's fine. I was like, whoa, like you were waiting for me. Like and there wasn't anybody waiting or anything. So I was like, yeah, I'll happily. I was like, I'll sign all these books, but if somebody comes up and they want to buy something, I gotta put it on pause, for a second. And he was like, yeah, that's fine. And I just like shot the shit with him and signed all the books, like.
I got a buddy like that. We just went to. I don't really bring many books. I'll probably bring like 1, 2, 3 books to get signed. He brought a friggin' short box when we went to the Portland Con.
Yeah.
And he went up to Randy Emberlin stack. And I'm like, dude, you see Randy like all the time. He's like, I gotta get these signed. He went over to a guy I can never pronounce his name. It's like Jim Cornette or Cornati or something like that. He's an artist. He worked on Exile, and he had a stack, and I'm like, I'm embarrassed to be standing next to you.
No, man, don't. Here's the thing. Okay, I don't know how any other, like, everybody in comics is different. Everybody's got different preferences, and like, I hear a lot of people like be like, somebody came by and they put something on my table, and I just can't emotionally handle it. Like there are a lot of like etiquette things, and it varies from person to person to person. So I 100% do not speak for everyone. But if you come up to me and you're like, hey, I have 50 comics from you to sign, I'm like, get the fuck in here. Let's sign some comic books, Like, I don't mind that stuff at all.
Well, that's good. I mean, they all didn't mind. It was just, I was like, God, dude, you're trying to
don't feel embarrassed. Don't feel, that's literally what they're there for.
That's crazy.
Are your kids reading comic books yet?
Not reading, but I do read a couple to my 5-year-old.
Yeah.
The 1-year-old, he obviously can't read yet, but the 5-year-old, I read. I do a lot of Chris Russo's G-Man stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we do a lot of his stuff. Like I like his stuff. It's good. We also did Chris Russo's. Oh, we picked up this indie book as well. Alterna Comics. You heard of them?
No.
They're a newer publishing company where they do newsprint. They brought back newsprint comics and stuff like that, and a lot of the stuff that they have is kids style.
Yeah.
So we just got Mr. Crit, I think it is.
Mr. Crit.
Mr. Crit. So it's a skeleton. It's a skeleton.
Yeah. That's cool.
And he's running from these guys that are trying to kill him again. He's like, not again, as he's running away. So
that's great.
Alterna has some really good kids style books, and I like getting those.
I have a lot of ideas for some kids style stuff that I want to start selling at the table, because a lot of kids come up to the table because everything on the table is in color, and it's all vibrant and it's all like bombastic, and because that's what I do. And they'll come up and they'll be like, hey, can I flip through powers? And I'm like, no, you cannot flip through powers. And they're like, oh, I'll just pick up this issue of Deadpool. And I'm like, that's even worse. Like, you're 5. No, please stop. Nothing on the table is for you. Please move on. And so I try to I want to get some like small mini comics that are like just for like $1, or something like that are just like photocopied, put together, just so that kids come to the table and they're like, oh, what do you do? What are you into? And I'll be like, hey, you should try this. You might like this. But I mean, like I said before, one-man show. I got to run the Instagram. I got to run the Twitter. I got to run the Twitch. I got to run, I'm trying to get books out the door. I have to have like a healthy, regular life on top of all this other stuff. It's like, shit, man, I don't have time to like actually draw comic books.
That's one thing. That's one thing I say is like I think a lot more cons. I think it'd be cooler if a lot more people have more kid-friendly stuff for them. Because that's like the whole time with my 5-year-old. I'm like, yo, don't touch that. Nope, back up. Don't know. Because everybody will have their sketches there, and
right,
don't
touch on the edge of the table. The kids are like, oh, I'm gonna just put my hands on this.
Let me just flop down on it. Like, I don't have $300 for this sketch.
But I have nieces and nephews, and I understand it's kids being kids, but like some creators are like really like, I don't know. They're a little more intense than I am. A little less forgiving, but I also have I don't really have like very expensive stuff on the table usually. Like the stuff on the table really taps out at like $20. So it's like, oh, if a kid like dings up a trade, it's not like the end of the world. It's like I sell the trade for $15 rather than $20. It's not a big deal.
Right.
But yeah,
comic stuff. He wants to know what's on your pull list, man. Do you read comics?
I do read comics. I've been reading Spy Seal by Rich Tommaso, which is
I love it.
It's a great book. It's very wordy, so strap in if you want to pick it up. But it is very good. I actually talked about it a little bit on my stream about how the color I think could be better, but he's working with like a very limited palette, and I think like 90% of the time it works for him, and then like 10% of the time I'm like, and this is just me being a fucking snob, is like I'm like, oh, we could get a better depth of field in this. Like we could fix this a little bit with just a small thing. But I mean, it's so good. You should pick it up. It's very European kind of style. He's not I don't think he's European, but it's a European.
I don't think he is. I think isn't he like in the South?
Yeah. So I'm picking up that. I'm picking up a book called Redlands, which is Jordi Belaire's book that she's writing. She's normally a colorist. This is her first like full length that she's written. And I was like, at first I was like, I get this thing. Like Jordi's cool. I know she's smart. Like I know she's like got her shit together, and she's written a couple short stories in the past. So I was like, oh, I'll pick up her comic book. I'm sure it's pretty all right. And then I opened it and I'm like, God fucking damn it, she's good at everything. Like, like
she's
it
better
was
at
like,
drawing that little little render. You're like,
Vanessa Del Rey draws it, and Jordi wrote it and colored it, and it is so good. And then I'm reading that, and then I'm reading Mr. Miracle, because Mitch crushes it, and Mitch and Tom are so good together.
Mr. Miracle.
Yeah, you don't like it?
I couldn't get into it.
Couldn't get into it.
I tried. Like, everybody told me about it.
If you're expecting like Jack Kirby bombastic Mr. Miracle, like,
no,
it's not that.
No, I went in free headed with it, and I just couldn't get into it. Like, I'm not saying it was bad. It just wasn't. It wasn't for me. I couldn't get into it.
I think that there are things that Mitch is doing as a creator in the panels that I think is very, very interesting. I think that there's choices that he's making because he's coloring it, because he's coloring himself, that are like extremely bold, that I wouldn't think about doing, that now I'm like, maybe I should think about doing this. Like, just fucking better to beg forgiveness than ask permission kind of thing. Where he's just like, I'm just not going to draw the rest of the leg on this guy, and we're just going to color swatch it in, and like, that's going to be it. And I'm like, fuck, man, should I be doing that? Maybe I should be doing that. I got to find a place to do that. And like, so I feel like it's really like mind bending me a little bit, and responding to Mitch's, like, the way he creates is very, very interesting, humbling, unique. Like, I can't say enough good things about it. I know it's not your cup of tea, and I understand it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I really love it. I picked up the first issue of DC Metal recently, but like, that was not my cup of tea. Like, DC Metal's cool and all, but I was just like, what is going on, right? I was like, I have no point of I was so used to like self-contained stuff, and I like had no idea what's going on in the DCU, and I was like, I'm just gonna try something out of my comfort zone, and I was just like, what is Batman's on a dinosaur, and I guess that's cool, but like, I'm just fucking stressed out. Like, I don't know what's going on.
Well, I'm with you on that one. I was definitely not.
Were you lost too?
I was very lost, to the point. Like, I like Scott Snyder, and I like Greg Capullo.
It was well crafted. Like, the pages were beautiful, but like, I was just like, I felt like I didn't know. Like, I felt it was rushed. I mean, Green Lantern looked like he was Asian. Yeah, I didn't feel like it was rushed, but I also didn't really have any point of reference. Like, the last time I saw Capullo's work was New 52 Batman stuff. I read the first like 6, 7, really enjoyed it, but just dropped off just because I got busy. Right. Yeah, I didn't necessarily feel like it was rushed, but I did feel like it was like a punchline of a joke that I never heard the setup for, where I was just kind of like, what's going on, guys? What are we doing in here?
Right.
You know, like,
you're that guy, just come in and start laughing at the joke.
Right, that's how I felt reading it. And I don't think that's DC's fault. Like, I think it's just like, it's not for new readers. It's like a reward for readers who have been sticking with them. And so I was like, this just wasn't for me, you know? Right. Exactly. So that's why I've been picking up. I've been picking up some old trades. Like, I just got I just ordered on Amazon a trade from Kevin Mellon and Brent Butler, a book they did in 2012. I forgot what it was called. Shit. Yeah, I just ordered it, so I don't actually own it yet. So, you know, like, forgive me. But I've been wanting to pick up Sheriff of Babylon. I actually have the first trade, but I haven't actually read it yet. I had a 2-read stack that's like a monster. But Mr. Miracle, I've been enjoying it so much that I've been wanting to read the old stuff. So
now that actually has me curious. Now, with the books that you work on, like, say Realm, obviously. Do you actually go back and actually get your issue, and you actually go and read it to see what's going on?
When I work on a book, like, I work from the script, and I'll be coloring, and like I'll be reading the script, coloring it, and like you can kind of piece it together that way in your mind, but until you sit down, it's like if you spent 8 hours reading 4 pages of comics, and then like so you like it's like I read that comic, but I read it in a dream. It's like hazy kind of thing. And then when you sit down and read it, it feels more tangible. Like you can let it sink in a little more. So with projects that I particularly respond to, like The Realm, like Heartthrob, like Cave Carson, I will go back and read it. And I think that there's also value in going back and reading it, because especially with stuff that I take a lot of chances on, like Cave Carson, like, oh my god, endless chances. Like just like whatever fucking crazy shit I could think of, we throw down on the page. And I want to see like a lot of times I fear that I'm like high on my own supply kind of thing. Like I'm home by myself in the studio in the dark being like, this shit's gonna fucking rock. We're gonna crush it. And then I'm like fueled up on coffee and no sleep. And then like the book comes out and I'm like, rather than thinking, oh, I crushed it, let's move on. It's like, okay, let me open it up and be like, did this work the way I wanted it to? Because seeing it on screen and seeing it in Photoshop is an entirely different animal than holding it in your hands, So I take a lot of chances, especially in that book. And so because of that, I read that book. And also because it's written really well and I really like Chloe Carson. And I think she's the heart of that book and I always want to read it.
Well, why don't you explain a little bit about it? Because I mean, I know a little bit about it. So why don't you explain a little bit of that
Cave Carson has a cybernetic eye. Starts with a funeral of his wife, and it's a superhero book. It's about DC's foremost geologist. He's a Silver Age character. When like anybody who was good at science, it's like chuck him into a comic book, like geology. Here he is, and he, true to his Silver Age roots, it's a book about him fighting like giant monsters in the center of the earth kind of thing. But it's like him, that's what's going on like the surface. But really it's a book about him and his family and their dysfunctions after the funeral and like what his daughter thinks about him, Chloe Carson, his relationship with Wild Dog as a friend, and then like how the choices they make spiral out, and like how they function impacts the people around them, impacts the cultures around them. There's a race of people in the center of the earth, and Cave is very involved with them, and how Chloe like deals with that, and how she deals with having Cave as a father who does this kind of thing, is kind of like the heart of the book. I really love it. When the first issue came out, people were calling it Sad Dad Comics.
Sad Dad Comics.
Yeah.
Why?
Sad Dad comic. Because like Cave is so sad in the first issue because his wife died, and he's like, he has this cybernetic eye and he doesn't know what it's for, and it's like having problems. And he goes to the creator of the Metal Man, who I forget what his name was just now, but like they have a relationship, and he's basically like, fuck it, I don't know what this is in your head, like whatever it is, it's doing something. And it's like kind of him getting to the bottom of this, and it's so good. But he is so sad because he's like, he's dealing with this mystery that's in his skull. He's dealing with his daughter, who maybe doesn't respect him, who maybe he could have been a better father to. He's dealing with the death of his wife, and he's dealing with this company that's like, he finds out is also screwing him over and kind of infringing on his intellectual property a little bit. And like, just kind of like they have malicious intent with like what he wants to do in the world, and the things he wants to create. So he's got a lot going on. He's dragging around a lot of problems on his shoulders. Sad Dad Comics.
It's interesting. So
yeah.
Okay. So what issue is that at right now?
We just hit issue 12. which is like the second trade. The first trade's out. It's the first 6.
Okay.
12 just came out about a week ago, and 12 wraps the Whisper story arc. The Whisper story arc starts at number 6. So it's like it's 2 arcs, but it's really just like 1 arc of 12 issues. And yeah, and we've got I'm not sure how much I can talk about what we got planned next, but we're taking a little break and we're going to be back, and I almost told you about our whole plan, but I'm not going to do that.
Well, I mean, you know, hey, we almost got some insight, boys. We almost got some insight.
Oh, you almost got
almost got them. And then you had Heartthrob, which, you know, it came out a while back through Image, right?
No, Oni Press.
Oni Press. That's right.
Yeah, okay. They've been fantastic to us. The first trade came out. The first trade is only $10 cover. I think it's like $8 on Amazon. It is so cheap if you want to just like check it out. It's got the first 5 issues in there. Robert Wilson IV did the art. I did the coloring, and Chris Sabella does the words, and it is so good. It actually just got optioned for television. So if you want to get in on the ground floor and be in on something before everybody else is in on it,
you spec people out there.
It's $8 to pick up the trade. The single issues, I think there's a couple variants floating around for it. I'm not exactly sure because it happened. The first trade came out like a year and a half ago. So if there are a couple of variants, I think I've sold them already. Thank you, Comics and Stuff. We're very excited about it, but it's also a very surreal thing because, like, you know, like I color and I own a piece of the intellectual property for that, but it's like I am like way out of my depth when it comes to Hollywood stuff, and Oni is fantastic in that they are handling a lot of that, and I have a great working relationship with them, and I trust them, so it's a good situation. A lot of times this stuff can get off the rails, and I'm happy to say that, you know, so far it feels like it's not going to go off the rails, so I'm very excited. But it's like, you know, one part of like 4 or 5 parts to like get to actual, like, here is Heartthrob the show, you know, like it's the first step in many steps, so
that's good.
Yeah, and we just the first trade ends on a cliffhanger, which I will not spoil for anyone who hasn't read it, but the second season, as we're calling it, is another 5 issues, and we got plans for a 3rd season, and then after that it's over, and I'm on issue 4 of 5 for the second season. So the second trade should be fairly quickly following this podcast, you know, like this live stream. So if you get into it, if you check it out, you won't have to wait super long for the second trade. You shouldn't have to. And then we'll be in the closing. So
that's awesome. I mean, I know I picked it up. I know, matter of fact, we did on the old show, 4 Awesome Guys. Yeah. We all went. I picked that issue up and I read it. It was very interesting read. I mean, as I said, it's a young lady who gets a heart transplant, and then basically the heart kind of like is talking to her, like the soul is talking to her, and it's a lot of like Robert or something like that. Catbird.
Yeah, it's like it's a fucking weird, awesome book that I feel like if most people gave it a shot, it would be their favorite thing. Like the first issue is like not only is it like Mercer's a con man and a thief. She falls in love with him. He's like, I'm gonna teach you how to steal. We're gonna get my old crew back together. So it's like, it's about bank robbery. It's about heists. The first issue is like about punching an abusive ex in the nose and fucking flipping your desk at work. So it's like, for anyone who's ever wanted to live that fantasy, it's for them. You know, like it hits all these buttons in pop culture too, with the 70s and the flavor of that I feel like if any of that kind of stuff is up your alley, you're gonna love it. It's this little beautiful book that I feel like if I put it in more people's hands, they will enjoy it. It's very
colorful. Yeah, it's very colorful. Like the colors you've done, because you're a colorful person, as you said.
Yeah.
It's very careful. I mean, like, that's what drew me into the first issue.
Yeah.
Was that cover was very careful. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'll grab this. I will check this out.
I don't know if you noticed. So Callie, when she gets her heart, one of the little subtle things I did with the colors, especially in the first issue, was I desaturated all the skin tones that was everybody else other than Callie. So Callie felt warmer. Callie felt like her blood was pumping for the first time in her life. Then like everybody else around her was like dialed down a little. So like there's all these like little things in that book, and I'm trying to like leave clues for people within the color, so that way like when the thing gets wrapped up, like there will be you'll like finish reading it and you're like you like get your moment at the end where you're like Kaiser Sose, it was Kevin Spacey the whole time, and then you want to like rewatch it, you know, like you want to reread it. Yeah. So
I'll have to actually go back to that issue and flip through it and check that out.
Yeah.
We got 2 quick questions in the chat. Well, one's going to be a long one.
Sure.
The other ones should be fairly quick. Have you ever colored anime?
No, God no. I am not a big anime guy, but I'm open to it. But I don't think they're open to me.
Right. And then the next one is again from Rebel Comics, but now he's under his Niobe Comics channel, because that's where he shows off talks about his comic book Niobe.
Yeah.
He asks, best advice you can give to indie guys coming up through Kickstarter. I know it's a general question, but never hurts to ask.
Okay. Here's how I would do it if I was running Kickstarter. But full disclosure, I've never run a Kickstarter, so I don't have like a ton of background in what I'm saying. I'm just like, here's my speculation. I would try to. So if you're kickstarting, presumably the comic isn't done yet, which is like a kind of a tough beast to handle because you got to get somebody excited about the book, but you don't have anything done. So it's like you have to have a substantial amount in order to get people excited about the Kickstarter. What I would do is, like, if you're like, I want to do a 6-issue run, I would finish the first issue and I would put it in front of every single fucking person you possibly can. Every news review site, every like any artist who would look at it, any like I would go to Comic Cons, I would be like, hey, do you want to check this out? Here's my email address. I will send you a PDF, or give me yours and I will send you a PDF. Like you don't have to do any of the work. Like I would try to put it in as many people's faces as possible, so that the small percent of people who will retweet and create buzz for it, like, will do that for you. So it's not your one-man show the whole time. That's one thing I would do. And the other thing that I would do is I feel like Kickstarter heavily relies on community. And so if I was going to do a Kickstarter, I wouldn't even touch it until I built the community that I would need. And you can do that in multiple different ways. Like just consistently streaming on Twitch is a good way to like build a community. Consistently streaming on YouTube, making a podcast, talking about comics, like hosting things, like just anything you can do to like be like, hey, I do comic books, or I'm a little bit knowledgeable about comic books, to like build an audience will help you in the long run. And, even if a Kickstarter doesn't necessarily get off the ground for the first time, it doesn't necessarily mean that like, that it's necessarily a failure, because it just means that maybe you haven't found, your audience hasn't found you yet. And that by doing the first Kickstarter, putting together the first Kickstarter, like, you built X amount of the audience, a percentage of the audience. And that when you get to the second one and you're rallying for that, you already got those guys behind you, So like, I wouldn't get discouraged about anything. Like if the thing that I hate about Kickstarter when I hear people talk about it is like, oh, this guy got kickstarted and I didn't, and so I failed, and so I'm just going to take all my toys and go home, and we're just done here. We're packing it up. Like, comics isn't for me. Like, the gritty truth is like shit is hard. Like making a comic book is hard. Making a comic book is expensive. Trying to do everything all on your own is fucking difficult, and you're gonna need help, and you're gonna need to build an audience. And so like the first Kickstarter, if it doesn't succeed, fucking you got 10 more in front of you. You got to keep going, you know, like that. You got to look at it that way. Like part of the reason why when I was talking about breaking into comics and how I felt like things weren't working and I was in a bad headspace was because I felt like, oh, like you just show up and then you're there and then things work out. And it's like, no, it's a constant forever grind. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon, and you got to treat like Kickstarter in general in the same way. And I guess good rewards, I don't know, fuck it.
Good rewards, yeah. Now, I know he's working on his 4th Kickstarter. So he's already
so
1, 2, and 3. So he's working on his 4th. I mean, he's doing pretty well.
Yeah,
I think what it is he's trying to find a publisher, somebody that would actually.
If you want to talk about, like, I'm a little bit more knowledgeable about that. Like, if you want to talk about finding publishers, the best thing you can do is just make comics, like, period. If you're a writer and you want to get, like, picked up by a publisher, the best thing to do is put together a comic on your own, find an artist, find a colorist if you want. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be in color. A lot of people who work at comic book publishers love comics, so they'll read black and white stuff. Like, it's not a big deal. I would say that if you're like, hey, I'm working on a Kickstarter and I put together this comic book, Marvel job, please. Spider-Man, please. Like, that's, you got to adjust your expectations. Like, you need to make inroads and make your mistakes on people who are going to take a chance on you, and the only people who are going to take a chance on you are smaller publishers. And there's not going to be a ton of money in smaller publishers because they know that, like, okay, we're going to take a chance on this guy. We might sell 1,500, you know?
Right.
Like, so given that we have that budget, like, how much can we allocate for page rate, all that kind of stuff? So, like I said, everything's a grind. So it's like, okay, you're putting together Kickstarter stuff now, put it together. And then when you're done with the Kickstarter stuff, like, don't be like, well, that Kickstarter's over. Put it in the box, ship it out. Like, we're done forever. Like, no, you got to be like, okay, that Kickstarter's over. Let me put it in front of comic book publishers. I know, like, Oni occasionally does an open call for stuff. Like, be aware of that kind of thing. Marvel and DC, if you visit them at conventions, you can schedule portfolio review time. Like, I got all the jobs that I've ever gotten have been through either, like, well, I mean, like, newer jobs have been through knowing people and them being understanding what I do. But, like, when I was starting out, all the jobs I ever got were like, I would bring my portfolio to a show and be like, hey, can you just give me some tips? And, like, that people would look at it and be like, oh yeah, this is good. This is, you know, you might want to change this, you know, like, go through. And they'd be like, hey, I have a thing coming up that I think you might be good for. Like, here's my card. You know, like, that's the way to get it off the ground and into other people's hands. Like, you got it. Like, the thing that I want to stress is you have to go to Comic Cons, you have to network, you have to meet these people in person. If you're like, I'm just gonna, and it's weird because, like, what we do is such an introverted, I'm sitting in my house by myself fucking, you know, 340 days out of the year, and I'm just like silently grinding it out, which is, like, the most introverted, like, thing ever. And, like, I interact with people over email and Twitter when I want to, you know, like, but the reality is like, you also have to be a little bit extroverted. Like, you have to be able to, like, go to a show, talk to somebody, be able to pitch your idea very, very quickly and not stumble over it. You have to be able to, like, be like, hey, this is my book, you know, and maybe even bring free books if you can afford to, like, print up like 200 extras or 100 extras or whatever. And then just be like, I'm going to hit every single Comic-Con in my area, like, just, like, in a circle like 200 miles from where I live. I'm gonna hit every single Comic-Con. I'm gonna give my book to every single person there, and then be like, I'm gonna try to do and this is another piece of advice. I would not try to do New York or San Diego. I would try to do smaller conventions, because smaller conventions, people have more time for you. By the simple fact that there are less people demanding their time. You know, like I know when people are at New York and San Diego, it's like, you know, yeah, I'm going to sign your book, but like, you know, I guess I'll take a look at this, but I have like a panel to do, and then I got to meet with a publisher, and then we're getting together another creative team, and like I have like a million things. But if I'm at like, God, I did a show in Ocala, Florida, which is a small town here in Florida. I mean, it's not that small, but it was small. It was like me, Justin Ponzer, Laura Martin, Larry Watts, and then a couple Silver Age guys in a room the whole day, you know, and we had nowhere to go, nowhere to be. There were no panels. It was like a very low attendance. It was just like chill, you know, and like those are the shows where you can get quality one-on-one time where you're like, hey, I made a comic. I just want to know your thoughts. How can I make this better? How can I break in? And those are the connections that you're going to have that are going to be fruitful. So, yeah.
Yep. Hey, I mean that's actually a lot of information for somebody who's trying to break into the industry.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, that's some actually pretty good quality stuff. I mean, some of it is kind of common sense on it, but also getting information from the other side, someone who has you know experience and has broken into it. You know, it's like that makes a lot of sense, because not everybody can get, you know, screen time, FaceTime to be able to.
And the other thing is too, like, you may love, like, I don't know who the hot new writer is, right? I guess Scott Snyder, but like, you may love Snyder's stuff, but like, that motherfucker does not have time for you. Like, I don't mean to like he's gonna sign your comics and move on. Like, he's not gonna take your comic home, but like, you gotta go to shows and like talk to people who are breaking in as well, and talk to people who are like mid-level. You know, like those dudes who are like top 25% of comics are like, they just don't have the time. They're like, they got bigger fish to fry. And it's not like a personal thing. It's just like, you know, like I am here to do panels. I am here to do this. I'm here to do this. I'm signing from these hours to these hours. It's like, you can leave my comic with me, kid. And like, maybe something will come out of it. But like, the more fruitful thing to do is to be like my buddy Larry Watts has done some Robin Hood with Zenoscope, and he's done some Army of Darkness stuff with that written by Cullen Bunn, and like he's like, you know, scraping the surface, trying to break in right now. He's a good guy, and he goes to a ton of shows, and like, he is a great person to like talk to, because he's not fielding the volume of people that are like that Scott Snyder is fielding. He's a good person to like, you'd be like, hey man, and this is the other thing, don't fucking bullshit. Like, just be like, you know, don't bullshit. Be like, hey, I'm a big fan of your work. Oh yeah, what have you read? I don't know. You did like something. You know, like don't do that. Be like, be upfront, be honest. Be like, hey, you know, like flip through his stuff. Be like, hey, I really love your stuff. Do you have the time to like take a look at something I did? Would you want that? And if he's got time, he will take a look. And if he doesn't, you just gotta be like, thanks, man. You know, like, you can't take it personal. You can't take it like hard. Like, that's the thing, is like, there's so much ego wrapped up in like, I made this, you know, like, this is precious to me. And it's hard to separate from that. But I assure you that like, no one, I mean, other than maybe some cranky older comic artists who like, no one's out to shit on you. Like, if I have time, I try to give anybody who comes up to my table, I try to give as much time as they need. You know, if they come up and they're like, hey, I have a portfolio, I'm trying to break into comics. What are your thoughts? I will give them all of my thoughts. I will give them as much time as I can. And if somebody wants to give me a book to take home, I'm going to try to get to it. But once I'm home, it's like all bets are off. But, you know, like,
Evan, it'll be done, Evan.
Yeah,
it's
Evan,
okay.
Evan, it's going to get done. Evan and Lan, it's going to get done. But, you know, like, I I try to like, yeah, that like mid-level is where you want to be, because you want to be punching up, and if you're trying to break in, like the other guys who are trying to break in is not where you need to get thoughts from. The guys who are, you got to be like looking at what they're doing and being like, okay, first of all, how does my book distinguish myself out? Like how do I shine as a gem amongst all these other people? If you're doing the same thing everybody else is doing, you're white noise. You know, like it sucks, but that's the way it is. And then if you like, okay, I'm going to punch up, like this dude's done a handful of things, this dude's done a handful of things, I'm going to see what they think. And then they will be able to give you, you know, creative, constructive feedback, and they might be an avenue for more work. So yeah, that's my best advice.
So we're going to take this last question here.
Sure. Last one, guys. I won't keep you any longer.
Well, it's the last one. I mean, you know, 2 hours in. Yeah, it's good 2 hours. I mean, I've learned a lot, which is really cool. And unfortunately, we didn't really talk too much about the books.
I mean, I can plug them right now. Let's plug them right now before the question, because you know what? If this goes on YouTube and people are like, "Oh, now he's just plugging his books," let's turn it off. Fuck those guys. Fuck those guys. So let's plug the books right now, real quick.
Yeah.
Deadpool 287 is coming out October 11th. It is dope as hell. It is fucking nuts. Cable is in it. It's awesome. Pick it up. You're gonna want to pick it up.
Is it a $3.99 book or is it a $9.99 book?
Fuck, dude, I don't know. Like, I don't know until it's in my hands and I read it the same as you. Like, I'm not in charge of that.
That's from all the Deadpool.
You don't got a dollar. You don't got a dollar.
A dollar, I'll take a Deadpool book for $1 all day. I'm a Deadpool fan, but they lost me at $9.99.
That's what I'm saying. $1 more.
$1 more. Then I won't be able to get Realm.
Yeah, well, yeah, you should buy that too.
Right.
Yeah, you should buy the Realm. The Realm is the first issue has come out. Jeremy's been doing like a crazy tour where he's hitting all these comic shops. If he's coming to your shop near you, fucking go. Jeremy's an awesome dude. He will shoot the shit with you for hours, just like me. Like, you will watch him sketch, and then you will be like, "Fuck, man, this dude does it. This dude is legit." The second printing for #1 is going to come out soon. I did a color variant for it, so it's the same image but colored differently. I'm gonna put it on my Instagram very shortly. If you're on Jeremy's mailing list, you've already seen it, but most people probably haven't. I don't know how many people are on his mailing list, but that's gonna be on my Instagram. It's Nick_Filardi on Instagram. Yeah, what else is coming out? Heartthrob is we're on the last couple of issues for Heartthrob season 2. We got TV buzz now, so if you want to get in on the ground floor, like, I feel like so much of indie books is about like everybody wants something new, but they want to decide on what the cool new thing is before everybody involved gets invested. So it's like, oh, Wick Div's the new indie thing, and it's like they sell fucking crazy, and Paper Girls, and it's like they sell fucking crazy, but then it's like trying to get somebody to try Heartthrob is like twisting somebody's arm, and I feel like it's like on the same level of quality. And I think that in the future, Heartthrob has potential to blow up. So if you want to get in on the ground floor, there it is. It's cheap.
You're preaching what I preach. I've always said the indie stuff is always as good as the big two, the big three.
And it's tough to break through the noise. You really got to like be like, I'm gonna try something. You know, like you got to be able to do that. And I get it. Like, comic books are expensive. You got a pull box. Like, something's got to go. Maybe it's that fucking terrible decision you made, like cutting Deadpool because it's $1 more. Like, that's a terrible decision. But you know what? You got to make it. What else is coming out? I got a short story and a Bitch Planet thing that I don't know when that's coming out, but that's coming out soon. Okay. With, Elsa Charité. I can't pronounce her last name. She's very French. She's awesome. I don't know. I did some variants with Brent Schoonover. We did a Wasp Phoenix variant, so look for that. I did a Captain Phasma variant with Elsa for the Star Wars line for issue 4. Bring that to shows. I want to sign some Star Wars stuff.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't know. I got a lot of stuff going on.
And it sounds like it.
You can follow me on Twitter, and I'll talk about it, and I'll push it there. And you can follow me on Twitch, and I push all my books there. So if you're into stuff, like, and you follow the social media, you will not be lost amongst all these books that I think are fantastic. If you can't tell, I'm like so jazzed on all my projects that I'm working on right now. Like I don't think there's a dud in the bunch. Like I really feel like they're very different. So maybe not everybody's going to want to pick up every single one, but I don't think any of them are bad is the thing, you know?
I mean, that's how I found out about Realm. I follow you on Twitter and YouTube. So
I'm Nick Phil on Twitter. I'm Nick Phil on YouTube. I'm Nick Phil on Twitch. And I am Nick_Filardi on Instagram because I fucked up the branding. I'm sorry about that.
I got your all your stuff except for the Instagram. In the description there, so everybody can go ahead and check you out there as well. So
last
Johnny DaCosta, this is for you, buddy. He says, congratulations on Realm. Don't know if this question was already asked, but I was just wondering, who are Nick's stylistic influences?
When I was coming up, I was looking at a lot of Dave Stewart. Dave Stewart is like, he was the gold standard for comic coloring for a long time. His book in particular, I mean, Hellboy is fantastic.
Yes, it is.
Hellboy is gold standard, but like not everybody draws like Mike Mignola. So like Hellboy is beautiful, but it's tough to pull from Hellboy if you're a colorist, because it's like, fuck, man, I can make Mike Mignola look great. Everybody can. Mike Mignola is great to begin with. But I'm not slighting the artist on this, because he's also one of the top 10 or maybe even top 1% of comics. But Cliff Chang did Beware the Creeper forever ago with Dave Stewart coloring him, and it was beautiful, and it made me start to think about color in a really different way. I've been heavily influenced by that, and Lee Lowridge. I started working in his studio when I broke in. Before I broke in, really. I mean, I don't know if you can really. It's like pre everything. I was working in his studio, so a lot of his techniques that he was using at the time, I just picked up through osmosis. You know, I've been using like the palette that I've stole from him, blatantly stole. I've been loading it up into every single version of Photoshop and every computer I've had for the last 15 years. So like there's a little bit of similarity in there. I know, Matt Wilson, if you're watching, you're doing the same thing. So no judgment. No judgment. He was in the studio with me too, and he was doing the exact same thing. So yeah, those have been influences on me. And then like I'm starting to pull from just movies that I've seen lately with like interesting color arrangements. Movies, because they have things in motion, kind of have different problems to solve than comic books. But I've been pulling a little bit from there, and I'm starting to dig into fine art a little bit more. Like I said, Bradshaw, like he's doing like these crazy paintings of like docks and stuff like that, and a lot of that comes out in the Realm. That's kind of where my headspace is at for the Realm. It's like weird. It's like Fallout palettes meets like a weird 17th century fine artist, and then I'm like, comic books. Here we go. So yeah, I'm like kind of all over the place when it comes to like what's I'm into. What's influenced me? I know Scott Wagner. This just popped into my head. He does Atomic Robo, and when we did 2 arcs on it. And one of the things that has been sticking in my mind forever has been like, I was coloring all the guns gray and all the tanks and stuff gray, and he was like, "Hey, we can make a yellow tank," and I was just like, "You changed the game, like." What? And then so like since then I've been like, okay, what does everyone do? Let's do something else, you know? And like I feel like that's really what his note was, is like, what is everyone doing? Fuck that shit. Let's do something else. And you know, a lot of that comes out in Cave Carson. I did like a crazy, that book was influenced by fucking like math fractals and shit. Like I pull from everywhere.
That's
Yeah.
pretty funny. Changed the game with the yellow tank. Who would have thought? A yellow tank.
He's like, oh yeah, you can put a paint job on things. It's fine.
Well, we're gonna go ahead and call it at that, man.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, man. It was super awesome. I really enjoyed
Thanks for
it.
having me.
Everybody in the chat, I appreciate all you guys that stopped by. I mean, so many of you that came through, asked all your questions and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, if you guys haven't watched it, you're gonna catch it on the rewind, and I appreciate it. Thank you again. Anything you want to say at the end?
Yeah, if you're catching this as a VOD, I'm going to try to stream on Twitch regularly. I'm going to stream again on Tuesday. So if you have a question that or something that I did not cover in all of the many, many words that I just threw at you, you can come in and ask me, or you can ask me on Twitter. Like, I'm super, super approachable, and I'm trying to be as transparent as possible with coloring. So any question you have, really, no wrong answers. No wrong questions, no wrong answers. We're just fucking brainstorming as we go. So get on the ride. Get involved.
Get involved. That's right. You got questions? Ask. I left the links in the description, so you guys can go hit up his YouTube channel. Please subscribe, because I told this man like a long time ago I was going to help him get more subscribers, and I think he only got 2, and I felt so bad because at 4. I'm like, what the hell, man? Nobody's listening here. Pick up some subscribers.
It's tough, man.
Let's give him some subscribers. It is.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. So have a good night.